Okay, we're live on YouTube now, so we'll begin. I want to welcome to the podcast today, Dr. Jacqueline, who's going to be sharing with us something that most of you probably never heard about. We're going to be talking about a cerebral detox, as well as just overall health and what's happening there. So as we begin, I had a little feedback there from the actual live on the other station, so I had to pause that. But we're live now. So Dr. Jacqueline, thanks for being on the show. Tell us a little bit about what got you into something called the cerebral detox, and tell us just basic foundation of what that is, and then we're going to get into a little bit deeper on this subject.
So I've been in the health and wellness industry for I don't even know how long now. It seems like at least half my life. I've been trying to figure this out, starting with personal training, and then at some point I realized my passion was a little bit more into nutrition, and then the holistic side of it, of getting to the root causes of people's health issues. And as I've been working on my business, the Wellness Trinity, and consulting clients, at some point I was faced with the business decision of how do I brand myself? That's really actually a lot of reason why I decided to think about the brain and how that affects people and mental wellness. I had a cousin that one of her daughters actually committed suicide, and I had a good friend who was dating some guy, and he committed suicide, and then just knowing about the autism and the Alzheimer's and how all these mental wellness challenges are on the rise. And here I have these answers with all the functional medicine and naturopathic work I was doing, that there's a huge gut brain connection, and I didn't feel like it was being preached enough. And here people are dying and they're not being able to live their life to the fullest because they don't realize there's this huge connection with their overall health, in general, and things like parasites and heavy metals and you name it. So that's what opened the can of worms for me diving into the brain and wanting to know more about how that works, and how to just kind of give people a full program of information on all the different intricacies of what affects it, and how we can really just cleanse our body so that our brain can work to the optimal effect that it can.
That's great. Well, tell us a little bit about what got you into and what your main motivation is with your clinic there. What do you see mostly when people are coming in?
I get a whole bunch of things. I mean, you have some people that are just trying to be fit. I mean, I do have a background in fitness. And then you have people that are just not feeling well. And I feel like in general, most people are just not feeling well. And they don't necessarily know why. And they've gone to doctor after doctor, and they're just not getting answers. They're like, my doctor says I'm normal, my labs are normal, and I don't understand what's going on. So, I mean, I've dealt with a number of different clients, whether they are mental wellness challenges, like can't focus, they're low energy, they just don't have motivation, depression. But I've also dealt with a lot of different types of autoimmune challenges, and even things like insomnia. Uh, I don't know, the list goes on. I mean, these, I feel like when people come to you, it's not just usually one thing. They might think that it is, but then we start going down the list and they're like, well, I can't sleep. My relationships are bad. I can't get stuff done during the day. And so on and so forth. So, I've dealt with people with cancer and things like that too. So like I said, it's a range. I deal with a little bit more with people that are probably in their 30s to 50s range, but I do have some children as well, and people in college too that I've worked with.
Great. Well, tell us a little bit about Cellcore Biosciences, which you also have a really great podcast we want to share with the listeners as well. So maybe they can check out more of what you're teaching. But tell us a little bit about Cellcore Biosciences, and it's you got so interested in the company you actually work with them now. So tell us a little bit about that background and what that journey was like.
Well, the thing is, I mean, as I search for answers and just dig deeper, I mean, you just go down this rabbit hole of research and wanting to know more and more. And When you find people that really seem like you resonate with, and that are actually preaching truth, I mean, you just want to pick their brains. Like that's why I've connected with you actually, because I'm like, this guy is onto something. And so that's how I felt about Cellcore. I came across them a few years ago, when they were doing, Dr. Jay Davidson had his Parasite Summit that he was running. And I had just left my job that I had been working on my business on the side. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this full time and no crutch here. And I was in Hawaii. I needed a little break before I went all out in that. And it was the perfect time to listen to these Parasite Summits. I had lost my hair. I had gone through several liver cleanses, and I just had gone through my own health journey. My energy was low, and trying to figure out what was going on. And so at that point, I felt like, okay, I did all this other type of work. Um, what's next? And parasites were on my radar. And luckily, I came across this Parasite Summit at the same time. So after listening to this summit, I realized, I think I have something bigger inside. And so I used the herbs that I had already, and I started taking a lot of them, and I definitely passed some big worms, and which was a relief, my soul, and just in general. I mean, knowing that my hair could grow back and everything. I mean, I was under 20, I was under 30 actually at the time when my hair was falling out, and that's not a pleasant thing for someone in their 20s, especially a woman. And so that's what first sparked my interest. Fast forward a year and a half later, I met Dr. Todd Watts, who is Dr. Jay Davidson's business partner, and actually the one that started this company. And I was at a seminar for the Great Plains Lab, and I was telling Dr. Watts, I had no idea who I was talking to at the time, by the way. And I will also say, I was thinking at the time, no, maybe I should look more into these herbs. And so serendipitously, around that same time, I ended up at this event. I met Dr. Watts, and I was telling him all about these herbs. That was Mimosa pudica and what I heard in the summit. And he was like, "Oh, that's actually my business partner." And it was my it was my idea to do that summit. And this is my company actually. And I'm like, oh, well, if that's not a sign from God to sign up for this, then I don't know what is. So I got my account, and ever since then, that was about a year and a half ago. I've just been really just trying to soak up as much information as I can from these doctors and what they're doing and how to implement it in my practice. And it really just took everything I was doing a whole nother level.
Oh, that's great. Well, tell us in your pursuit of the company and working with things, you developed this program called Cerebral Detox. So tell me a little bit about uh, what that involves and how people can get involved and things of that nature, and what you've seen happen. What is the outcome of the Cerebral Detox?
So I'll tell you this first. I had a live practice in Las Vegas, and I ended up moving, and so it was kind of a nice way to just kind of shut the door on doing everything live, and then doing everything online, remotely, virtually. So I work with people all around the world. I was already kind of planting seeds, with the podcast and my social media presence and all that before, but it was like game on once I moved and in October. So. I had, between then and now, I had been creating all kinds of videos that I embed on my website, and it's a group coaching program. So a lot of the information, people watch the video, and then we do a group coaching program, where I actually will do lab tests. I send them straight to the door. So they're functional medicine lab tests to figure out what are the parasites, what are the fungus, all kinds of stuff like that, heavy metals, chemicals, etc. What is throwing the body off, really, which is throwing the brain off. And then I'll do a consultation, and then once a week we meet in this group. And it's just been such a divine appointment. I feel like every time we meet in this group, and the things that come out, most of the people I'm coaching are women at this point. I do consult some men on the side, but in this particular group, and I am not opposed to having men in the group, but I think that I might actually have some separate groups as it grows.
Hmm.
But we're looking at the whole picture here, because our body, as much as I preach about parasites and cleansing the body and really getting to root causes physically, very well, right? There's things we feed our mind, and there's things that feed our spirit, and there's several different types of roots that people can have that are totally affecting their mental wellness and their overall health in general. So, I talk about things like God. I talk about things like using Bach flowers to help with balancing emotions. And now I'm talking to you, like
Mhm.
I've been really, wanting to add your brain tap into this and seeing how that correlates. So it's just, looking at the whole person, figuring out what are the roots in their mind, body, and spirit, and how, and with the lab test, we're seeing how is it manifesting physically. So, from then I'm just taking them on a journey from A to Z. And what I realized, before I used to do a lot of consultations live, I would let them go off for 3 months and then I'd see them again. Some people would be okay with that. And they would go off to the races, do what they need to do, and they were fine. But I found that there was definitely a good chunk of people that would either kept coming back to me and asking questions, and I would just consult them, without like having my time paid for, or they would fall off the edge and they didn't have a lot of accountability. So the program allows people to have that accountability where they're checking in, we're setting weekly goals, and we're just trying to find those nuggets of what is going on. Like why, I'll tell them to take something and they're not taking something. And sometimes there's just a little mental click that we need to identify of like, oh, this is the situation. It's really not that big of a deal. So that's the idea of the program. I do give them a Bach flower remedy kit, and we do have the foundation of using the cell core protocol and just ebbing and flowing with it, depending on where they're at in their journey.
Is that something that the listeners can go check out and maybe join? Or where would they go to get that information?
So it's on cerebraldetox.com.
Okay. So we'll put that in the body of the notes too. If you're listening to this, you can come back to it. The cerebral detox, what was it?
.com.
Cerebraldetox.com. So if you go to cerebraldetox.com, you can check out that cleanse or that program, if you will, and then see if it's something that might work for you. So what have you seen happen after somebody goes through this program with you? What are the kind of the benefits that people experience?
Well, one, I mean, the people that were having a hard time breaking through with their health challenges before, I mean, we're seeing breakthroughs left and right. Um, I have this one lady I've been coaching for a while now, and I mean, she's just her cognitive function is so much better, her energy level. This all reflects even in her relationship with her husband and her kids. And
Hmm.
she's a stay-at-home mom and was having a very hard time doing, a standard like stay-at-home mom type of work, like cleaning the house. And her husband just would get fed up with it, and it was just like, what the heck? And eventually I had to tell her, look, I understand you don't have energy. Like if you don't have energy, it's really hard to keep things in order. You have 3 kids and you're taking care of your husband, you homeschool, I can understand why it's hard to keep up with his demands. So I actually have a video of her testimony on my YouTube channel as well too. And so seeing her be able to take these leaps and bounds of even just cleaning her house was a big deal. I mean, she had before and after pictures of how messy her house was and how she was able to finally clean it because I've been coaching her through this program, and even just setting goals and being there to be accountable to it. I mean, one, she has more energy because she's passing all kinds of things that don't belong in her body. The
Hmm.
pictures are so profound of the fungus and the parasites that are coming out of her, and even things I don't even know how to identify are coming out of this woman. But that's that. And, I see her relationship with her whole family changing, and it's a beautiful situation.
That's
you
great.
know
Yeah. So when they kind of come out of it, do they feel like they have like a new mind or a new brain or something like that? I mean, some people probably are
yeah.
really having challenges there. So,
Yeah, totally. I mean, energy is a huge thing that people, I touched on that with this lady. Um, and I'll tell you this, like when I was living in Las Vegas, I was doing a lot of hair tests. And the one thing that I'd see a lot of in people is uranium. And that totally affects people's thyroid, affects their energy. They feel like they're out of control. And so this lady in particular I'm talking about, I mean, she had that as well too. And so as we're lowering the parasite load and then other infections, and as we're lowering things like the uranium, people just feel like a whole new brand new person. And I have people that now want to start to go to school or change their career. I mean, that's another thing I talk about in this program as well is what is your purpose and why do you wake up every day? It's a huge thing that, like, I mean, if we don't have something that that we feel driven to do every day, I mean, we're not going to be very motivated, even if we try to cleanse our body. So I feel like there's that huge connection, even with tying it into what is what is the bigger picture? Why are we even trying to get healthy? So I've seen people make career shifts, get pregnant,
Mhm.
see better labs with their medical doctors. So you name it. And even with children, I had a kid that the parents thought he was autistic. He wasn't diagnosed at this point, I don't believe, and was seeing that he was a little bit off. And while the other kids that they had were not quite like that. And so they knew something was off, and within a matter of a couple of weeks of just addressing certain things that I found, the kid was able to actually he was the grandma could tell that there was a huge spike in his cognitive ability too. When I looked at his blood before, I mean, it did not look good. So um, there's a huge gut brain connection via the vagus nerve.
Mhm.
And if our gut is all thrown off, our brain is all thrown off. And I can actually see these signs when I would look at the blood under the microscope. So now I do functional medicine tests, so I look at it a little bit differently.
Mhm.
But that was what I was doing at the time, and so that was one of the things that really was amazing, as well as just knowing that even these kids that have these mental wellness challenges can take things to a whole nother level if they're addressing these root causes.
Hmm. So as you're working with this, and one thing I wanted to add that just for the listener, even Abraham Maslow said that in order to have happiness in your life, you need to have purpose in your life. So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, even if it just means helping one person, once you start doing that, you bring about happiness. So a lot of people are looking for that. And, once they start working on themselves, it seems pretty obvious that they want to start working with other people. So that's great. So when you got involved with Cellcore and the protocol, how did that work into your program, and how are you using it now, and what can we expect from Jacqueline in the future with using it?
So the protocol, I mean, this company, Cellcore, they take leaps and bounds, it seems like, every day. So my practice has kind of evolved as they've evolved. And I was carrying tons of different types of supplements and lines, and I always wanted the best of the best, and I still do.
Hmm.
At some point, my husband and I decided that we're going to try to narrow things down. And of course, at first I was like, how do I do this? What about my magnesium and this and certain things that I would use from other companies? Then I realized, well, Cellcore seems to have this systematically figured out in a very easy way. We call it, and so just to reiterate, so the Wellness Trinity is my business. Cellcore, I'm a rep for that company, so, or an account. We call it a business development consultant, and so I train practitioners with this as well. But we call this foundational medicine. So there's this huge movement of functional medicine. We're creating this new movement of foundational medicine that comes before that, where you're dealing with all these other root causes, and then you're dealing with the little intricacies that are you find in these functional medicine tests. Because what we find is that when you deal with what's throwing the body off of homeostasis, then you might find that maybe you don't need tons of magnesium, or maybe you don't need tons of these other types of probiotics and XYZ. Like even with Cellcore, we don't even really talk a lot about probiotics, because what we're doing is pulling out the root cause of what's causing the gut microbiome to be off in the first place. So, like I said, it's foundation, and then we can fix the things that are we still see off on test, and a lot of it works itself out once we deal with these underlying roots.
That's great. Super. Well, I know that there's a lot of breakthroughs in oxygen therapy and what's going on with the body and why that's important. But can you tell us first, why is oxygen, a supplement that has oxygen component to it, so important today? And then how is the biomolecular oxygen? Tell us why that's superior out there in the marketplace.
So one thing we want to know is that um, our body is about 65% oxygen. 65 to 68% is some of the numbers I see, and 25% of that goes to our brain. So, like I said, I have a passion for the brain like you do. And
Mhm.
if we don't have enough oxygen, which is what is the majority of our body, then our vital functions are just not going to work very well. Then you have this spiraling effect of these pathogens growing out of control. Tumors can start to grow. I mean, the body gets so off balance. And then, of course, our mental wellness and cognitive abilities are just all thrown off. And so, oxygen is just so crucial. And, I've never seen any supplement like, and we don't even really like to call them supplements at Cellcore. more of a formula. It's something beyond almost a supplement. We're not really trying to supplement. We're trying to just kind of um, I don't even know how to describe it at this point. I'll have a better way to describe it at some point. But basically, our body needs oxygen, and so when we take that oxygen, we create this environment in the body where these pathogens don't like to grow. And then you're helping to be able to clean things out and be able to provide the oxygen that the brain needs for its vital functions. Now, with pollution in the air, us cutting down the Amazon and trees, and living in places where there's not a lot. We live in these stone buildings and cities. I mean, I was lucky I was able to move to the forest, so that's a whole different story. But most of my life, I mean, the last time I lived in a desert, so there was not really trees over there. And then, I lived in California, and then they were just jam packing people in there. People are just lined up on the freeway. So you have all the smog in the air. This stuff is robbing our oxygen. And so if you think about it, like I said, if our oxygen is being robbed in our body, so it's going down, it's not, then we don't have enough for our brain, then why do we think that there's more mental wellness challenges when we talk about living in cities? There's more crime, there's more ghettos, there's more issues with people just behaving correctly when we're just so removed from our element. We're supposed to coexist with nature, and there's a reason, because we're exchanging oxygen. We get that from the trees. So that's one thing. There's many things that biomolecular oxygen can do. And when we take it, you take it internally. So I literally make a drink like in my thing here every day. And so I put a lot of E3 Live in here. Do you know what E3 Live is?
No.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. And they do have one, in general, it's good for the brain. But they have one called E3 Live Brain On. And so it has this extra PEA in it, and it helps with cognitive function and just mood in general. So I'll put the E3 Live in here, and then I'll put the biomolecular oxygen, Mito ATP, and these minerals. And that's my brain cocktail. The oxygen was such a game changer for me myself. As I drank that throughout the day, I could totally tell my cognitive function is just like at a higher level. I can focus better. I can just have better memory. I see things clearer. I can continue going throughout my day and not feel as bad. And so, so that's the drink I make. And then the other thing is you can put it in enemas. So you put it in enemas, you put it in your drink, you can put it topically. So when our body's trying to heal itself, our wounds, it needs that oxygen. And so whether someone has something like psoriasis, or they have a cut, or some type of wound, or even a sore muscle, we have practitioners that use this on sore muscles, and when they work out, and their performance is actually a lot better when they do that. So those are the few things. And I've had people with tinnitus put them in their ear and put it up your nose and nebulize it. There's stories of Dr. Watts, the owner of the company, where during this Corona season, people were he had a patient that thought they had coronavirus, and so they had internally took the oxygen, and then he nebulized it for 15 minutes, and they could see the oxygen saturation levels going up. So it's powerful stuff.
That's great. Well, tell us a little bit more about, you've already talked a little bit about your brain drink, but tell us a little bit why it's so important to have it throughout the day instead of just doing it in the morning. Or I know that even the Cellcore products that I have now that I'm using personally, they say take them in the morning and at night separately.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? And what's happening there?
I don't know if I can completely give you the most scientific reason behind that, but I can tell you I do feel a difference if I take it all at once versus if I just kind of microdose it and drink it while I'm doing my work during the day. And I'm wondering if maybe it's just because at some point, maybe if you have too much, just like any other supplement, if you have too much for what your body needs at that time, you might just start to pee it out.
Hmm.
I don't know for sure if that's what's happening with the
Hmm.
oxygen, but I just personally just kind of adapted that because of what I do with other things.
Hmm. So tell me a little bit about oxygen saturation levels and how we can increase them, but how do you measure it? What's the tool you guys have that measures it? Is it pulse oximeter, or what is it? What's doing it?
Honestly, I don't know what Dr. Watts did
Oh,
when he measured that. I'm sure he has some type of fancy machine because he does everything with excellence. um, but I'm just going off of what his testimony was. But I'm sorry, what was your other question?
Well, I was just asking about the oxygen saturation levels. Like if you could measure it during the day, you'd know, hey, I need to have a hit of
Mm-hmm.
this oxygen because my body's getting low. What causes the body not to produce enough oxygen? That I mean, I know that there's some people have more oxygen than others. You know, they check it at the hospital. I know to see what your blood
Mm-hmm.
oxygen ratio is. But what prevents people's body from getting enough oxygen?
Well, when you have, I mean, anything that really throws the body off of homeostasis, I would say like especially the parasites. I mean, they're just robbing the body of oxygen. These viruses that are going around are robbing people of oxygen. It's kind of almost like what comes first, the chicken or the egg thing. I mean, did the pathogen start the body, or did the body with not enough oxygen, um, create that environment where that like to live? But nonetheless, though, it's this downward spiral until we deal with those root causes. So, I would say get rid of the parasites, get rid of the other funguses and bacterias that are causing the body to be lower in that. But also, what's the environment that someone's in? I mean, do they? I worked in a smoky environment at some point when I was living in Las Vegas. That's definitely robbing your body of oxygen. The other things are like, what are you eating? If people are eating raw living foods, they're going to get oxygen from their food naturally. But if they're not eating that, then they're going to be not getting as much oxygen just from their own food. Are they drinking enough water? A big chunk of water it's H2O, so it's part of it is oxygen. So we're being deprived of oxygen if we don't have enough water. So those are a few things, but I just can't encourage the world enough to we need to plant more trees in general, to help with this oxygen crises. We can't just keep cutting things down and expect our bodies to thrive in an oxygenated environment if we don't have enough trees.
Right. Yeah, I'm very fortunate too. I'm looking out. I live next to the national forest here, but we planted 10 trees in our yard anyway. Because
Oh, nice.
we lost two trees and they said they don't always stick. So we got some more trees because our deer we got some apple trees and things like that they can come and eat. So yeah, we're big proponents of that as well. So when we're talking about um, this just in general here with the cell core protocol and the program, uh, when you're talking about getting to root cause, because a lot of people talk about that and they say we're getting to root cause, but especially when I spoke to the head of sales there, they were talking about uh, getting this root cause, and this is actually something they do before
Mm-hmm.
cleanses. So I think it would be important to tell our audience why are these, you call them foundational, you know, uh,
Mm-hmm.
protocols or whatever. But tell us, why is Cellcore so good at getting to these root causes? Because this is a big issue people don't want to face. I mean, parasites. Nobody wants to believe that they have these things in their body. And he actually showed us a picture on our podcast where somebody had a worm that was like 4 feet long or something that came out of their body. So tell us about that a little bit, and so the listeners can understand this foundational concept.
So the important thing to realize is that it's never just one thing that people are dealing with. There's a whole group of things. Cellcore is so big on talking about these parasites, but we also have to understand why. Why do we even have these parasites? It's not just that people have animals or they eat sushi. I think the bigger thing, which I don't recommend eating sushi anymore after I learned about all this stuff and saw them in my blood. I used to make sushi and for my own food, and then I realized, oh shoot, I can't do that when I could see this blood floating, or I mean, this bug floating around in my blood. So that wasn't very nice. But so so the thing is, we have to look at the whole picture. Now, the beginning of the Cellcore protocol, what we're doing is there's 5 phases. And phase 1, we have drainage. It's so important. If the gut is not flowing, if the liver's all backed up, and we start to try to move these bigger bugs out, people are just not going to feel very good. And during that time, we also try to turn the mitochondria on and produce more ATP, which is our body's energy house. If we don't have enough energy, then we're just not going to be able to detox effectively. So we're not even talking about moving out parasites at that point or dealing with heavy metals or chemicals. We're just trying to prep the body so that it's in a place where, okay, now it can get rid of things. I'm sure some of you listeners or have done a detox out there, and you might even be terrified because you're like, I didn't feel very good. Um, so that's what you want to think about. Are you even pooping? Are you draining? Otherwise, you're just going to be stirring the pond and it's going to get mucky and it's not going to feel very good because you can't get it out. And so then we move into phase two, and phase two is the bigger parasites that we deal with. And the reason why parasites are such a big thing that we're talking about, one, I know you talked to Dr. Watson. He said everyone has a parasite basically, and I could validate that with all the
Yeah.
blood analysis that I did, and I could see it literally in people's blood. Pretty much almost everyone I did. I don't think there was one that went without unless I worked with them.
Mhm.
And so um, so one, I already knew it was a big problem, but two, a lot of these other pathogens and the heavy metals and Lyme disease, it lives inside these parasites. So usually I like to draw a little picture on my whiteboard that shows it looks like a bug and then it has these little things inside the bug. So it's like a bug within a bug. So if you get rid of the parasites in the beginning, then you're speeding up the whole process. And a lot of people have these bigger things in their body and they have no idea. And so they can cause blockages in the colon and their liver, and just different areas, even in their brain. People have parasites in their brain as well. So phase two, we're dealing a lot with the bigger bugs in the colon. And then phase three, we work into the smaller ones that are just systemic throughout the body and the brain. And then people can even use things like a neti pot or the nebulizer, and then use the systemic formula. We have para 3. So we have para 1, 2, and 3. And para 1 and 2 are in phase 2, which are the gut. And then phase 3, we have para 3. And that's where it's a liquid. So it gets more into the bloodstream, and you can actually nebulize that and get it straight into the brain. We're coming out with um, a nasal spray that actually people have moved out parasites through their nose. So this stuff is Dr. Watts. So there's two Dr. Watts here, Dr. Watts and
Mhm.
Dr. Watts, because they're
Uh,
brothers.
mhm.
Dr. Watts that you talked to is the national sales director. Dr. Todd Watts is the owner of the company. But Dr. Todd Watts and his science lab, I mean, they don't joke around. They're making sure that everything that they have is top notch. And they've been in the trenches working with clients, and they're trying to figure out where are the gaps of what are they not getting from their standard types of supplements and herbs and things like that. And so this nasal spray that's coming out is one of those things. And I can't believe the stories that I've heard, and even just the maybe month that I've been hearing this of a couple different people having worms coming out of our nose. So um, as we're in phase 3, we're working on some other stuff too, like viruses and chemicals and radiation. Phase 4 is a longer duration of time, and we're dealing with really just a lot more of the chemicals and radiation, but heavy metals. So a lot of people will do a hair test, or they'll talk about heavy metals, and we need to get rid of that stuff. But if they haven't gone through that other process first, then they could be spinning their wheels and feeling awful when they're doing some type of cleanse. Phase 5 is a little bit more centered around Lyme co-infections, but we are now even suggesting that people can use it in phase 4. Since we're doing it for at least 5 months, depending on where the client's at, they might need longer, or I would say at least 5 months for most people, but some people are definitely gonna need it longer depending on how toxic they are. The
Mhm.
Lyme co-infections are, a lot of them are bacteria, and we have one that's a protozoa. And so we just we will take certain tinctures along that time where we're taking these we're getting rid of the heavy metals and chemicals. So I know that's kind of a mouthful. This could literally take like up to a year for people if they're really serious about cleansing their body, which it's not the same thing as doing an overnight 3-day cleanse, juice cleanse, or two-week parasite cleanse. I mean, we're really trying to deal with every reason why the body can be thrown off, which is a reason why now we're growing parasites, and the whole gut microbiome is all thrown off.
Have you ever seen people that you've worked with or heard about that maybe they're diagnosed with Lyme, or they're diagnosed with uh, Epstein Barr or something like that? These kind of or even fibromyalgia, that there's not a lot of, I mean, people get diagnosed with some of these and because they don't know what it is, the doctor throws up their hands and says, this is your problem. And then they found out once they get rid of the parasites and things like that and get their body balanced, these symptoms go away. Have you ever seen that
Oh
happen?
yeah, yeah. I have even a client who's a lawyer in Las Vegas, and he has one of the most healthiest lifestyles of all my clients that I consulted up into that point. And he kept having this, he called it a candida issue based on what he was seeing with other types of practitioners. So when he came to me, he was like, I'm doing this with this other practitioner, but I kind of see results, but then not long standing. And so I'm like, okay, well, what's going on here? So I look at I look at the whole picture as much as I could with what I had. And I found out he had parasites and he had a lot of uranium. The whole Las Vegas problem, in my opinion, is that uranium. And so, and it was a lot. I mean, he was living there for 25 years. So I think it just kind of kept accumulating as much as he was living a healthy lifestyle, eating healthy, exercising daily. He's a successful lawyer. So, financial problems are probably not really as bad, and so that to say, like, we can still be exposed to these chemicals. So I started working he was doing all the para ones and twos, and I'm sure he was doing a bunch of other things at the time, but also really working on lowering that heavy metal, that radiation, actually, the uranium. And the candida issue and the skin issues went away. His hair actually started growing back too. We weren't even trying to work on that, but he was probably his 40s or 50s, I want to say. And so a lot of people, it's normal for men, or what we think it's normal, at least, for men to lose their hair around that time. But we weren't trying to do that, but his hair started growing back. And so I'm sure there was a few other symptoms. I can't remember exactly at this point, but that was the main thing. He had this rash because they were calling it candida, but the bigger picture that wasn't being addressed were these parasites and was the uranium.
Okay, that's exciting. So you've heard from the doctor here, and we're talking about the cerebral detox. So you can go there. I put in the meeting notes. If you're on YouTube, you can see the notes that will take you to those websites you're talking about. You can join the group. It's a group. Do you do it individualized, or you do it in groups, or how do you bring people through this program?
So it's a mixture. In general, we do it as a group coaching, and then we have a Facebook group too. So we do it on Zoom once a week, and then the Facebook community. But when we do testing, I do the consultation separately outside of the group. So that's a little bit more where we refine things. So the Cellcore protocol is incredible if people just if they don't want to work with me, they can just literally go ahead and do that by themselves. But the benefit of working with a practitioner that uses the line is that we can ebb and flow with where they're at. I mean, I have a client that has a lot of fungus and molds. And so there's certain types of supplements within that protocol. I'm just saying, hey, we need to up this a lot. And then there's certain ones that, maybe we might need to be in a phase longer. I have a client that's really, she's just really off. So she needed to be in phase one longer than in general, the general public. So that's where working with a practitioner, whether it's me or someone else that's using the line, can really help ebb and flow with it. So the consultation that I do one-on-one is where we can kind of tweak it a little bit, but along the journey in the group, some of it just kind of comes up naturally, where people realize, okay, well, I'm feeling a little bit like this, then I need to increase this or decrease that, and so on and so forth.
I know also you've offered to give our listeners a free super immunity juice guidebook. So where do we go to get that? Where can we find uh, that link, or where do we go?
So if you go to the wellnesstrinity.com, it's right there. You just put your email in, then it will get sent straight to you. And I'm a big fan of growing your own microgreens. I talked about planting trees. I personally haven't figured out how to do my own garden outside in my backyard. That's my next to-do list. But I have pretty mastered, I would say, growing a microgreen farm garden and in my kitchen. And so I just have these stacks of trays.
Mhm.
So they're super nutrient dense type of foods, and then again, oxygen dense, biomolecular oxygen. Obviously, I love that supplement, but getting it from your foods is important too. The oxygen, and then of course jam packed minerals and nutrients. So in that book, it talks about how to grow your own broccoli microgreens. And there's a lot of information with like Dr. Rhonda Patrick, and just in general. Even the Cellcore products have broccoli sprouts in them too, some of them. And so you can grow these fresh in your house, and then you can put them in your juice. So I talk about how to supercharge your juice basically with using things like the microgreens, and also things like the oxygen, Mito, ATP, E3 Live, and some other good stuff is in that.
That's great. And again, you can check her podcast out, the Wellness Trinity podcast, which is you can follow her and follow the new breakthroughs in her own protocols as well as Cellcore protocols, and see how that can help you in your business. So also, because you're doing this in your business and you're helping out people, do you ever coach or help other practitioners to implement
Yeah,
this in
yeah, I
their practice?
do. So the Wellness Trinity, I work directly with the consumer, and the with Cellcore Biosciences, I work directly with practitioners, and I train them how to do the Cellcore protocol, and how to refine it so that they can work the best with their clients, and that's pretty much it. So whether you're a practitioner or you're the general public, I have a way to help you.
That's great. Okay, so check it out. Dr. Jekyll's here to help you. She's giving you the free book. You go to her website, and we'll put all those in the meeting notes in that. Anything you want to leave our listeners with? Any last messages that you want to share with them before we end the podcast today?
Yeah, I guess a few things. One is, if you know someone that has mental wellness challenges, or even any health challenge, really, I mean, I just want to, my message here is always hope. I really want people to realize that there's so much out there, and with companies like Cellcore who are really raising the bar with everything that we're doing, this holistic field. I mean, the answers can get clearer and clearer. I know things are crazy with this coronavirus and, pandemic, and I'm over talking about that as well too. um, but just in general, without that, their immune system tends to be really bad, and we get something like this coronavirus, and it just tips people over because we're not dealing with this foundation. So I say it's now is the best time. Now is the best time to invest in yourself, invest in your children, and decrease the toxic load and these parasites in your body, because otherwise, we get some type of stressor like the coronavirus, the second wave possibly, or some type of other stressor. Maybe the economy is doing terrible, or family member dies, or whatever the stressor is, and it just tips the person over in their health and causes a whole nother spiral of other issues. So if we deal with these root causes, then our body just doesn't, it's not as stressed out when we deal, and our mind actually too, when we do have some type of other stressor in our life. So that's that. I just want to leave people with hope, and definitely check out Cellcore too, because I just can't speak highly enough about it. I wouldn't work for the company. I already had my own thing going on, but I just felt very strongly when I was approached with this opportunity, because I just am so excited that I can raise up other practitioners to be able to spread this message of hope and healing.
That's great. So, Brain Tap Nation, what I'm going to ask you to do is like this video, share it with your family and friends. We just heard that everyone has parasites. They might not want to fess up to it, but when you can see it, of course, if they were there and looking at the dark field microscope or whatever you're using to show them the blood. I know when my wife saw her critter in her blood when we got back from India in the 90s, that shocked everybody. It looked like a prehistoric critter running around inside of her. And and I think we've been chasing health ever since then, really, because she was in good health before she went there, and then it just has a spiraling effect. So reach out, find out if this is something that can help you. It might be that missing link to what's going on. I mean, before I heard about Cellcore, I didn't know there was a program before the programs that people needed to do, but it makes a lot of sense, because if those pathways are not clear, people cannot drain and cannot get rid of those toxins. And the way you described it was pretty graphic, people are, and
It
so
gets pretty graphic.
yeah, yeah, you don't want all that just stirring around in there. You want to get it out of your body. They say we're not what we eat. We are what we don't eliminate. So we want to eliminate that bad stuff. Most people have heard me talk about. There was a heart actually that they kept alive for 35 years at Harvard. All they had to do is they kept feeding it. They kept it clean of toxins, and they stopped the experiment because they figured they could keep the cell alive forever. because as long as it had nutrient and as long as it was detoxed, cells are designed to live forever. They're not designed to age like we think they
Mm,
are. They're aging because of some interference with the electromechanical activity of the cell. So if
mhm.
you can keep that clean, so this is one more step. And I think as humans, we're going to keep perfecting this. So if you want to be on the cutting edge of that information, tune into her podcast. And we're going to have that in the link, but you can go to the Wellness Trinity podcast and listen there. She's also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn and all those things. So you can find her there. I put those in the body of the notes as well. So I want to thank you for spending a little bit of time with us here, Dr. Jacqueline, who is a natural medicine practitioner. She does do remote training with her clients and patients. So if you're interested, please go to her website, wellnesstrinity.com. Tune in, just as I've done here, and we're going to go there and check it out. And you can join our program from wherever you're at, really wherever in the world, if you're doing it remotely through the internet and helping people. So again, thanks for being on the call. We look forward to hearing about your successes and getting you more and more involved with BrainTap. That'll be exciting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is really like Brain Tap with Cellcore, and I would say adding an E3 Live in there too. I mean, you have solutions to people's mental wellness challenges, and I mean, a lot of it, I would say. I mean, there's probably other nuggets, but I mean, you just have so much, and so excited to partner with you, and I appreciate you bringing me on the show.
Okay. Again, like, share, get this message out to your family and friends. Just tell them, hey, I heard this thing and you might be interested. Share this link so we can get the word out there, get people oxygenated, healthy, and get back to the kind of life that we want to live here and live a life of health and abundance and leave the fear in the rearview mirror. So again, thanks for being on the call. We look forward to next week's. Remember, tell your friends about the BrainTap Business Journal. Join us each week as we bring to you cutting edge science that can be used in a clinic to help not only improve your clinical results, but also help your clinic stay healthy as far as the bottom line. So these are all healthy tips that you can use in your day-to-day practice and in your life. So again, thank you for tuning out at BrainTap here today. Thank you.